The silence in the weapons training facility was broken only by the sound of expensive tactical boots clicking against polished concrete floors. In a world where appearances meant everything, where designer gear and family connections opened doors, one woman was about to prove that the most dangerous weapon isn't always the one you can see. What happened next would leave an entire room of elite trainees questioning everything they thought they knew about skill, respect, and the power of quiet confidence. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun cast long shadows across the entrance of Blackstone Tactical Academy, one of the most exclusive firearms training facilities on the East Coast. Located in the rolling hills of Pennsylvania, the academy was known for training the children of senators, CEOs, and military elite. Its reputation was built not just on the quality of instruction, but on the caliber of students it attracted, those who could afford the $30,000 annual tuition and came with letters of recommendation from four-star generals or Supreme Court justices. Sarah Chen stood at the security checkpoint, her worn denim jacket hanging loosely over a simple gray t-shirt. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, secured with what appeared to be a rubber band rather than the designer hair accessories favored by most visitors to Blackstone. She carried a small canvas messenger bag, its edges frayed from years of use, and wore a pair of basic sneakers that had clearly seen better days. There were no logos, no brand names, no expensive accessories that might signal wealth or status. The security guard behind the bulletproof glass looked up from his computer screen, his eyes scanning Sarah from head to toe with barely concealed skepticism. Blackstone Academy had very specific protocols about visitors, and this woman didn't fit the usual profile. Most guests arrived in luxury vehicles, wore clothing that cost more than his monthly salary, and carried themselves with the unmistakable confidence that came from knowing they belonged in exclusive spaces. "Name?" the guard asked, his tone already suggesting he expected this to be some kind of mistake. "Sarah Chen," she replied quietly, her voice steady but unremarkable. There was no authority in her tone, no demand for special treatment, just simple honesty. The guard's fingers moved across his keyboard, checking the visitor database. After a moment, he found her name listed under Guest Observer, Level 2 Clearance. His eyebrows raised slightly. Level 2 clearance was typically reserved for family members of high-ranking officials or journalists doing approved stories on the academy. He glanced at Sarah again, noting her simple clothing and modest demeanor, and wondered if there had been some kind of administrative error. "You're here with the Martinez Group?" he asked, referring to the morning's scheduled demonstration for families of new cadets. "Yes," Sarah confirmed, offering no additional explanation or context. The guard processed her temporary badge, sliding it across the counter along with a basic visitor's guide. "Main building is straight ahead. The orientation starts in conference Room A at 9:30. You'll need to stay with your assigned group at all times." Sarah clipped the badge to her jacket and nodded her thanks. As she walked through the metal detector and past the armed security personnel, she couldn't help but notice the look she received from other visitors in the lobby. A woman in a tailored Armani suit whispered something to her companion while glancing in Sarah's direction. A man wearing what appeared to be a custom-fitted, tactical vest emblazoned with his family crest shook his head subtly as he watched her pass. The main lobby of Blackstone Academy was designed to impress. Polished marble floors reflected the light from crystal chandeliers, while the walls displayed photographs of distinguished alumni and their achievements. Glass cases contained rare firearms from throughout history, each piece worth more than most people's annual salaries. Everything about this space communicated wealth, tradition, and exclusivity. Sarah found herself part of a group of about 20 visitors, all there to observe the Academy's training programs and meet with potential instructors. The other guests were exactly what she had expected, well-dressed, well-connected individuals who moved through the space with the easy confidence of people accustomed to being in elite environments. The women wore designer clothing and carried handbags that could have paid for a year of college tuition. The men sported expensive watches and perfectly tailored suits or high-end, tactical gear that had clearly never seen actual field use. At the center of the group stood Rebecca Thornton, a young woman whose presence seemed to command attention without effort. Her blonde hair was styled in perfect waves that had clearly required professional assistance, and her tactical training outfit was custom-fitted and bore the embroidered logo of her father's private security company. Rebecca's family owned one of the largest military contracting firms in the country, and she had grown up around weapons and training facilities. At 24, she already held advanced certifications in multiple firearms disciplines and had recently been featured on the cover of Elite Tactical magazine. Rebecca was explaining something about barrel harmonics to a small group of admirers when she noticed Sarah standing quietly near the back of the group. Her eyes took in Sarah's simple clothing and unremarkable appearance, and her perfectly glossed lips curved into a subtle smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I don't think we've been introduced," Rebecca said, her voice carrying easily across the lobby and drawing the attention of the other visitors. "I'm Rebecca Thornton. My family has been supporting Blackstone Academy for over a decade." "Sarah." "Chen," came the quiet response. Sarah didn't elaborate on her background or explain why she was there, which only seemed to intrigue Rebecca more. "And what brings you to Blackstone?" Rebecca continued, her tone friendly on the surface, but with an undercurrent of something sharper. "Are you considering enrollment? Or perhaps you're here as someone's guest?" Before Sarah could respond, a tall man in expensive tactical gear stepped forward. This was Marcus Webb, whose father served as an advisor to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Marcus had attended elite private schools his entire life and had never encountered a situation where his family name didn't open doors immediately. "I think there might be some confusion," Marcus said with a condescending smile. "This is a pretty exclusive event." "Are you sure you're in the right place?" Sarah met his gaze calmly. "I'm where I'm supposed to be." The response was simple and direct. But something about Sarah's quiet confidence seemed to irritate Marcus. He was accustomed to people either deferring to his authority or at least acknowledging his status. Sarah's demeanor suggested neither deference nor recognition of his importance. "It's just that most of our visitors are, well, familiar with this kind of environment," Marcus continued, gesturing vaguely at the opulent surroundings. "Blackstone Academy has very specific standards for its programs. Not everyone is cut out for this level of training." A young woman named Jennifer Walsh, whose mother was a prominent federal judge, joined the conversation. Her tactical vest was adorned with patches from various elite training programs she had completed, each one costing thousands of dollars and requiring significant family connections to access. "Marcus is right," Jennifer said, her tone suggesting she was being helpful rather than dismissive. "The weapons training here is extremely advanced. We work with military-grade equipment that requires years of experience to handle properly. It can be dangerous if you don't have the right background." "I appreciate the concern," Sarah replied evenly, her voice carrying no trace of defensiveness or irritation. Rebecca studied Sarah more carefully, noting her calm responses and complete lack of reaction to what were clearly attempts to establish social hierarchy. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Most people in Sarah's position would have either become defensive or tried to prove their worthiness by citing credentials or connections. Sarah's silence was somehow more unsettling than either of those responses would have been. "Well, I'm sure you'll find the demonstration educational," Rebecca said finally, her tone suggesting the conversation was over. "Just remember that observation areas are clearly marked. We wouldn't want anyone getting too close to the actual training equipment. The group was called to attention by Colonel James Harrison, a distinguished-looking man in his 60s who served as Blackstone Academy's Director of Operations. His uniform was immaculate, his bearing unmistakably military, and his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to command. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Blackstone Tactical Academy," he began, his words echoing slightly in the marble lobby. "Today you'll have the opportunity to observe some of our most advanced training protocols and meet with our elite instructional staff. Our programs are designed to provide the highest level of firearms and tactical training available anywhere in the world." As Colonel Harrison continued his introduction, Sarah found herself studying the facility's layout and security measures with the unconscious attention to detail that came from years of training. She noted the positions of surveillance cameras, the placement of emergency exits, and the subtle indicators that suggested additional security measures beyond what was immediately visible. Old habits, she reflected quietly, never really died. The colonel led the group through a series of corridors lined with photographs of distinguished graduates and displays of advanced training equipment. Everything they saw reinforced the academy's reputation for excellence and exclusivity. The firing ranges were equipped with state-of-the-art acoustic dampening systems, electronic target systems that could simulate complex tactical scenarios, and climate control that maintained perfect conditions regardless of weather outside. "Our students train with the finest equipment available," Colonel Harrison explained as they paused outside one of the main training areas. "Each weapon in our arsenal is maintained to military specifications, and our safety protocols exceed industry standards. We've had 0 accidents in our 12-year operational history." Through reinforced glass windows, the visitors could see cadets working through various drills under the supervision of instructors. The students moved with practiced precision, their expensive gear and confident demeanor reflecting hours of training and significant financial investment in their education. Rebecca positioned herself at the front of the group, asking detailed questions about training methodologies and equipment specifications. Her knowledge was impressive, and she clearly enjoyed demonstrating her familiarity with tactical concepts and weapons systems. Other visitors nodded appreciatively at her insights, recognizing someone who belonged in this environment. "The Barrett M107A1 is an excellent choice for long-range precision work," Rebecca commented as they observed cadets working with sniper rifles. "My father's company has been using them for overseas contracts. The recoil management system really makes a difference in sustained fire scenarios." Colonel Harrison nodded approvingly. "Exactly right, Miss Thornton. We've found that students with your background adapt very quickly to our advanced systems." Sarah remained quiet throughout the tour, observing everything but offering no comments or questions. Her silence began to draw attention from other members of the group, some of whom exchanged meaningful glances as they noticed her apparent lack of engagement. "I hope this isn't too overwhelming," Jennifer Walsh said quietly to Sarah as they moved to the next observation area. "The technical aspects can be pretty complex if you're not used to this kind of thing." "It's interesting," Sarah replied simply, offering no indication of whether she found the material challenging or familiar. The group's next stop was the Academy's weapons vault, a climate-controlled facility that housed an extensive collection of firearms from around the world. Rare military rifles, precision sniper systems, and custom tactical weapons were displayed behind reinforced glass, each piece representing thousands of dollars in value and technological sophistication. "This is our pride and joy," Colonel Harrison announced as they entered the vault. Over 200 weapons representing the finest in military and civilian firearms technology. Our advanced students learn to field strip and maintain every system in this collection. Rebecca moved immediately to a display case containing a selection of precision rifles. "That's a Chetak M200, she said, pointing to an imposing black rifle with a massive scope. Effective range out to 2,500 meters. We used similar systems during our security operations in Afghanistan. Marcus Webb joined her at the display. My father was involved in the procurement contract for those. Incredible engineering. The ballistic computer integration alone cost more than most people's cars. The visitors gathered around various displays, impressed by the sophistication and value of the collection. Many took photographs, though flash photography was strictly prohibited to protect the weapon's finishes and optical systems. Sarah stood near the back of the group, her eyes moving systematically across the displays. To a casual observer, she might have appeared overwhelmed or out of place among the expensive equipment. In reality, she was cataloging each weapon's specifications, noting modifications and customizations, and identifying several rare pieces that even most experts would have overlooked. "Miss Chen, isn't it?" Colonel Harrison's voice interrupted her quiet observation. "Do you have any questions about our collection?" The question drew the attention of the entire group. Rebecca turned from her examination of a custom R15 platform, curious to see how Sarah would respond. Marcus and Jennifer exchanged glances, clearly expecting an awkward moment as someone obviously out of their depth tried to pretend understanding. "It's impressive," Sarah said simply, her tone giving nothing away. Colonel Harrison waited for elaboration, but none came. After a moment of silence, he nodded politely and continued his presentation to the rest of the group. Rebecca approached Sarah as the tour moved toward its conclusion. "You're very quiet," she observed, her tone carrying a mix of curiosity and subtle challenge. "Most people have lots of questions when they see equipment like this for the first time." "I prefer to listen," Sarah replied. "Smart approach," Rebecca agreed, though her smile suggested she interpreted Sarah's response as confirmation of inexperience rather than wisdom. It can be embarrassing to ask questions that reveal how little you know about tactical systems. The comment was delivered with just enough sweetness to maintain plausible deniability, but its intent was clear to everyone within earshot. Several other visitors turned to observe the interaction, sensing the subtle power play taking place. Sarah met Rebecca's gaze steadily but said nothing. Her silence seemed to unsettle Rebecca more than any defensive response might have. "I'm actually giving a demonstration later," Rebecca continued, apparently feeling the need to fill the conversational void. "Advanced field stripping and maintenance procedures. It's pretty technical stuff, but you're welcome to watch from the observation area." "Thank you," Sarah said simply. The tour concluded in Conference Room A, where Colonel Harrison provided detailed information about the Academy's various programs and answered questions from prospective clients. Rebecca dominated much of the discussion, demonstrating comprehensive knowledge of training methodologies and equipment specifications. Her confidence and expertise clearly impressed the other visitors, several of whom approached her afterward to discuss potential collaboration or training opportunities. As the formal presentation ended, the group was invited to observe afternoon training sessions in the main firearms facility. This was where Rebecca would be conducting her demonstration, showcasing advanced weapons maintenance techniques for FIR. The benefit of visiting family members and potential sponsors. Sarah followed the group toward the training facility, her modest appearance drawing continued attention from other visitors. She overheard fragments of conversations that made it clear she had become a topic of speculation among the group. "I can't figure out why she's here," Jennifer Walsh was saying quietly to Marcus Webb. "She doesn't seem to know anything about firearms or tactical training." "Probably someone's assistant or something," Marcus replied dismissively. "Maybe she's taking notes for her boss." "She doesn't even have a notebook," Jennifer pointed out. Their speculation was interrupted by Colonel Harrison's announcement that the afternoon demonstration was about to begin. The group filed into the main training facility, a massive space filled with firing lanes, equipment stations, and observation areas designed to accommodate both active training and educational demonstrations. Rebecca had changed into specialized tactical gear for her demonstration, and she moved through the space with obvious familiarity and confidence. Her equipment was top of the line, each piece carefully selected and customized to her specifications. She had arranged 6 different firearms on a padded table, a Glock 19 pistol, an AR-15 rifle, and a K-47, a precision bolt-action rifle, a tactical shotgun, and a submachine gun. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rebecca announced to the assembled visitors, "what you're about to see represents years of training and thousands of hours of practice. Field maintenance is a critical skill for any serious tactical operator, requiring intimate knowledge of weapon systems and the ability to work quickly under pressure." The visitors gathered in the designated observation area, separated from the demonstration space by safety barriers and reinforced glass. Sarah found herself standing near the back of the group, her simple clothing contrasting sharply with the expensive attire of the other observers. Rebecca began her demonstration with the pistol, her movements precise and confident as she field-stripped the weapon into its component parts. She provided detailed commentary throughout the process, explaining the function of each component and the proper maintenance procedures required to keep the weapon in optimal condition. "Timing is crucial in field conditions," Rebecca explained as she reassembled the pistol with practiced efficiency. "A weapon that fails due to poor maintenance can mean the difference between life and death in tactical situations." She moved onto the rifle, demonstrating the more complex disassembly required for proper maintenance of the gas system and bolt carrier group. Her technique was flawless, her explanations technically accurate, and her confidence absolute. The visitors were clearly impressed by her expertise and professionalism. "This level of proficiency requires years of dedicated training," Colonel Harrison commented to the group. "Miss Thornton represents the caliber of student we develop here at Blackstone Academy." As Rebecca continued through each weapon, her demonstrations became increasingly elaborate. She explained advanced maintenance techniques, discussed common failure points, and shared anecdotes from her family's security operations that illustrated the practical importance of weapons maintenance in real-world situations. The visitors were captivated by her performance, asking detailed questions and taking notes on techniques they might want to learn themselves. Rebecca clearly relished the attention, her confidence growing with each successful demonstration. "The final weapon is perhaps the most complex," Rebecca announced as she approached the submachine gun. "The tolerance requirements for this system are extremely tight, and proper disassembly requires intimate knowledge of the operating mechanism." She began the final demonstration with characteristic confidence, but something went wrong. Whether due to the pressure of performance or simple human error, she struggled with one of the components. The smooth rhythm of her previous demonstrations faltered as she encountered unexpected resistance from a particular assembly. "Sometimes these older systems can be temperamental," she said with a forced laugh, trying to maintain her composure as she worked to resolve the issue. The visitors watched with growing concern as Rebecca's confident demeanor began to crack. What should have been a straightforward demonstration had become an awkward struggle, and her inability to resolve the problem quickly was becoming obvious to everyone present. Colonel Harrison stepped forward, clearly concerned about the Academy's reputation being damaged by a failed demonstration. "Perhaps we should move on to the next part of our program," he suggested diplomatically. But Rebecca was determined to complete the demonstration successfully. She had built her reputation on technical expertise and had never failed to complete a weapons maintenance task in front of an audience. The thought of admitting defeat in front of these particular visitors was unacceptable. "I can handle this," she insisted, her voice carrying a slight edge of desperation that she couldn't quite conceal. The tension in the room was palpable as Rebecca continued to struggle with the stubborn component. What had begun as an impressive display of expertise had devolved into an embarrassing public failure, and everyone present could sense the shift in atmosphere. It was at that moment that a quiet voice spoke from the back of the observation area. "The trigger housing pin is binding on the frame rail," Sarah said calmly. "You need to depress the magazine release while applying counterclockwise pressure to the upper receiver." Every head in the room turned toward Sarah. Rebecca's hands froze on the weapon as she processed the unexpected technical advice from someone she had assumed knew nothing about firearms. The room fell completely silent as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Sarah stood quietly among the group of visitors, her simple clothing and unremarkable appearance suddenly seeming less significant than the precise technical knowledge she had just demonstrated. Rebecca stared at Sarah for a long moment, her expression cycling through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been recognition. The weapon lay partially disassembled on the table between them, a mechanical puzzle that had challenged Rebecca's expertise and revealed unexpected knowledge in the most unlikely person. Colonel Harrison cleared his throat, breaking the silence that had settled over the demonstration area. "Miss Chen," he said carefully, "do you have experience with this particular weapon system?" All eyes remained focused on Sarah as she considered her response. The question hung in the air like smoke from a discharged weapon, carrying implications that would reshape everything the assembled visitors thought they knew about the quiet woman in simple clothes who had been observing their exclusive world with such careful attention. The afternoon sun streamed through the facility's windows, casting long shadows across the training floor where expensive equipment and wounded pride waited for resolution. In a world where appearances meant everything and credentials opened every door, Sarah Chen had just demonstrated that the most dangerous weapon might be the one nobody sees coming. The silence stretched on, heavy with anticipation and unspoken questions, as everyone waited to see what other surprises this unremarkable woman might reveal. The weight of Sarah's words hung in the air like cordite after a firing sequence. Rebecca's hands trembled slightly as she processed the technical advice, her mind racing to understand how someone she had dismissed as inexperienced could provide such specific guidance. The submachine gun lay before her, its components scattered across the maintenance table like pieces of a puzzle she had been unable to solve. Colonel Harrison stepped closer to the demonstration area, his experienced eye immediately recognizing the accuracy of Sarah's assessment. The binding issue Sarah had identified was indeed preventing proper disassembly, and her suggested solution demonstrated intimate knowledge of the weapon's internal mechanisms that few civilians possessed. That's exactly right," Rebecca admitted reluctantly, her voice barely above a whisper. She followed Sarah's instructions, applying the recommended pressure and technique. The stubborn component released immediately, allowing the disassembly to proceed as intended. The visitors exchanged uncertain glances, their previous assumptions about Sarah beginning to crumble. Marcus Webb adjusted his expensive tactical vest uncomfortably, while Jennifer Walsh stared at Sarah with newfound curiosity and concern. Social dynamics that had seemed so clear moments earlier were shifting in ways that made everyone present feel slightly off balance. "Miss Chen," Colonel Harrison said carefully, "your knowledge of that particular system is quite specific. Where did you encounter this weapon before?" Sarah remained silent for a moment, her gaze moving across the assembled group before settling on the colonel. "I've seen similar systems," she said simply, offering no further explanation. Rebecca completed her demonstration with the submachine gun, but the confident energy that had characterized her earlier presentations was gone. She worked mechanically through the remaining steps, her movements precise, but lacking the assured flair that had impressed the visitors initially. The knowledge that someone in the observation area possessed expertise she hadn't expected had fundamentally altered the dynamic of her performance. As Rebecca reassembled the final weapon, Dr. Patricia Hoffman, Blackstone Academy's chief instructor for advanced systems, entered the demonstration area. Dr. Hoffman was a woman in her 50s whose reputation in tactical training circles was legendary. She had developed many of the Academy's most advanced curricula and was known for her ability to identify exceptional talent even when it appeared in unexpected forms. "I apologize for the interruption," Dr. Hoffman announced to the group, "but I understand we may have encountered an interesting technical discussion regarding maintenance procedures." Colonel Harrison nodded toward Sarah. Miss Chen provided some very specific guidance regarding the submachine gun disassembly that proved quite accurate. Dr. Hoffman's eyes focused on Sarah with the intensity of someone accustomed to evaluating human potential under pressure. "I see. Miss Chen, would you be willing to elaborate on your familiarity with advanced weapon systems?" The question was posed politely, but everyone present understood its significance. Dr. Hoffman's reputation meant that her interest in a visitor was highly unusual and potentially meaningful. The expensive equipment surrounding them seemed to fade into the background as attention concentrated on the quiet woman who had already defied expectations once. "I prefer to demonstrate rather than explain," Sarah replied, her tone remaining calm and measured. The response sent a ripple of surprise through the assembled visitors. Rebecca's eyes widened as she processed the implications of Sarah's words. Marcus Webb took a step backward, unconsciously creating more distance between himself and someone who was revealing unexpected depths. Jennifer Walsh reached for her phone, instinctively wanting to document whatever was about to unfold. Dr. Hoffman studied Sarah for a long moment, her experienced gaze taking in details that others had missed. Sarah's posture, her breathing, the way she held her hands, the subtle confidence in her bearing despite her unremarkable appearance, all suggested training and experience that went far beyond casual familiarity with firearms. "Very well," Dr. Hoffman said finally. "Would you be interested in participating in a practical assessment? Nothing formal, just an opportunity to demonstrate whatever level of proficiency you might possess." The invitation was unprecedented. Blackstone Academy did not typically allow untrained visitors to handle their expensive equipment, and practical assessments were reserved for enrolled students or qualified professionals. The fact that Dr. Hoffman was making this offer suggested she had recognized something in Sarah that warranted exceptional consideration. "I would appreciate that opportunity," Sarah said simply. Colonel Harrison looked uncertain about the deviation from normal protocols, but Dr. Hoffman's authority in matters of tactical assessment was absolute. "Very well," he agreed reluctantly. "We can arrange a basic proficiency evaluation using our standard assessment protocols." Rebecca stepped forward, her competitive instincts overriding her earlier uncertainty. "If Miss Chen is going to demonstrate her abilities, perhaps we could make it more interesting. A comparative assessment, maybe. I'd be happy to participate alongside her." The suggestion carried obvious challenge, and everyone present recognized the underlying tension. Rebecca's reputation and family connections had established her as the undisputed expert among the visitors, and she was clearly unwilling to cede that position without a fight. Dr. Hoffman considered the proposal thoughtfully. "An interesting idea. We could structure it as an educational demonstration for our other visitors. Two different approaches to the same technical challenges might provide valuable learning opportunities." Sarah nodded her agreement, showing no concern about competing against someone with Rebecca's acknowledged expertise and expensive training. Her calm acceptance of the challenge only added to the growing sense that the afternoon was about to take an unexpected turn. "Excellent," Dr. Hoffman declared. "We'll use our standard advanced assessment protocol. 6 different weapon systems, complete field stripping, and reassembly under time pressure. Safety protocols will be strictly enforced, and both participants will be monitored throughout the process." The visitors were directed to a specialized assessment area equipped with advanced timing systems and multiple observation points. The space was designed to evaluate tactical proficiency under controlled conditions, with every movement recorded and analyzed for training purposes. Professional lighting eliminated shadows that might interfere with precise work, while ventilation systems maintained optimal environmental conditions. 2 identical workstations were prepared, each equipped with the same 6 weapons Rebecca had used in her earlier demonstration. The firearms were arranged in specific order: pistol, rifle, shotgun, submachine gun, sniper rifle, and assault rifle. Each weapon was in perfect condition, recently cleaned and maintained to factory specifications. Dr. Hoffman explained the assessment parameters to both participants and the observing visitors. Each contestant will have 20 minutes to completely disassemble and reassemble all 6 weapons. Points will be awarded for speed, accuracy, and proper technique. Safety violations result in immediate disqualification. Rebecca approached her workstation with obvious confidence, her expensive tactical gear gleaming under the professional lighting. She had completed similar assessments numerous times during her training, and her familiarity with the specific weapons gave her significant advantage. The visitors gathered in the observation area were clearly expecting her to dominate the competition. Sarah took her position at the adjacent workstation wearing the same simple clothing she had arrived in. She made no adjustments to her appearance, requested no special equipment, and showed no signs of nervousness despite the scrutiny of the assembled group. Her hands hung relaxed at her sides as she waited for the assessment to begin. "Contestants ready?" Dr. Hoffman asked, her finger poised over the timing system control. Both women indicated their readiness. Rebecca rolled her shoulders and flexed her fingers, going through a brief preparation routine she had developed during her competitive training. Sarah simply stood quietly, her breathing steady and her attention focused on the task ahead. "Begin," Dr. Hoffman announced, activating the timing system. Rebecca moved immediately to the pistol, her hands working with practiced efficiency through the familiar disassembly sequence. Her technique was textbook perfect, each movement economical and precise. She had clearly spent countless hours perfecting her approach to this particular weapon, and her confidence was evident in every motion. Sarah approached the same weapon type at her workstation, but her technique was subtly different. Where Rebecca followed formal training protocols learned through expensive instruction, Sarah's movements carried the fluid efficiency that came from necessity rather than academic study. Her hands moved with unconscious certainty, requiring no conscious thought to navigate the weapon's mechanisms. The visitors watched in fascination as both women worked through their respective assessments. Rebecca maintained her early lead, her extensive formal training evident in her systematic approach to each weapon. She provided running commentary on her techniques, explaining her methodology to the observing group and demonstrating the theoretical knowledge that underpinned her practical skills. Sarah worked in complete silence, her attention fully focused on the mechanical challenges before her. There was no wasted motion in her technique, no hesitation or second-guessing. Each weapon presented its own puzzle, and she solved them with the methodical patience of someone who understood that speed without accuracy was meaningless. By the midpoint of the assessment, Rebecca had completed 3 weapons and was beginning work on the submachine gun that had caused her earlier difficulty. Her confidence had returned fully, and she was clearly enjoying the opportunity to demonstrate her superiority over someone she still viewed as an amateur despite the earlier technical advice. "The key to this system," Rebecca explained to the visitors as she worked, "is understanding the relationship between the bolt carrier and the recoil spring assembly. Most people try to force the components apart, but proper technique requires patience and systematic pressure application." Her words proved prophetic as she encountered the same binding issue that had frustrated her during the earlier demonstration. This time, however, she was prepared for the challenge and applied the technique Sarah had suggested. The component released properly, allowing her to continue with minimal delay. Sarah had also reached the submachine gun at her workstation, but her approach was markedly different. Instead of the careful, methodical technique Rebecca employed, Sarah's hands moved with unconscious familiarity across the weapon's surface. She seemed to anticipate each step in the disassembly process, her fingers finding release points and pressure locations without conscious searching. Dr. Hoffman watched both contestants with professional interest, but her attention was increasingly drawn to Sarah's technique. There was something about the way Sarah handled the weapons that suggested experience far beyond casual familiarity. Her movements carried the unconscious competence that came only from extensive real-world application of these skills. "Interesting approach," Dr. Hoffman murmured to Colonel Harrison as they observed the assessment. "Miss Chen's technique suggests field experience rather than classroom training." The colonel nodded thoughtfully. Her knowledge of that binding issue was quite specific. Not the kind of thing you typically learn from manuals or civilian training courses. As the assessment entered its final phase, both contestants were working on the most complex weapons in the evaluation. Rebecca maintained her systematic approach, working through each step with careful attention to proper form and safety protocols. Her technique remained flawless, but the time pressure was beginning to affect her performance slightly. Sarah had reached the precision rifle, a weapon system that required particularly delicate handling due to its sophisticated optics and precision machined components. Most people approached such weapons with extreme caution, concerned about damaging expensive components or disrupting critical calibrations. Sarah's handling of the precision rifle caused Dr. Hoffman to step closer to the workstation for better observation. Instead of the tentative approach most people used with expensive precision equipment, Sarah worked with the confident efficiency of someone completely familiar with such systems. Her technique suggested not just familiarity, but intimate knowledge of the weapon's capabilities and limitations. "That's a $40,000 rifle," Marcus Webb whispered to Jennifer Walsh as they watched Sarah work. "She's handling it like it's a toy." "Look at her hands," Jennifer replied quietly. "She's not even looking at what she's doing half the time. She's working from muscle memory." The observation was accurate. Sarah's attention moved constantly between different aspects of the disassembly process, her hands continuing their work, even when her eyes were focused elsewhere. The level of unconscious competence she displayed was remarkable, suggesting thousands of hours of experience with similar equipment. Rebecca completed her assessment with 30 seconds remaining on the timer, her final weapon reassembled correctly and all components accounted for. She stepped back from her workstation with obvious satisfaction, confident that her performance had been flawless and that her technical superiority had been clearly demonstrated. Sarah continued working past Rebecca's completion, but showed no signs of stress or concern about the time pressure. Her movements remained fluid and controlled, each action deliberate and efficient. She completed her final weapon with 15 seconds remaining, placing the last component in position with the same calm precision that had characterized her entire performance. "Time," Dr. Hoffman announced, stopping the assessment timer. Both workstations were immediately inspected by qualified technicians who verified that all weapons had been properly disassembled and reassembled according to specifications. Safety checks were performed on each firearm to ensure that no damage had occurred during the assessment process. The results of the technical inspection were surprising to most of the observers. Both contestants had completed the assessment successfully, with no safety violations or technical errors. However, the qualitative differences in their approaches had been significant and telling. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Hoffman announced to the assembled group, "we have just witnessed two very different, but equally valid approaches to advanced weapons maintenance. Miss Thornton demonstrated excellent formal training and systematic methodology. Her technique was textbook perfect, and her safety awareness exemplary. Rebecca smiled broadly, confident that the praise confirmed her superior performance and technical expertise. She had expected to dominate the assessment, And while Sarah's competence had been surprising, Rebecca was certain that her own formal training had been clearly superior. Miss Chen, Dr. Hoffman continued, demonstrated a different type of proficiency. Entirely, her technique suggests extensive practical experience with these weapon systems under field conditions. Her efficiency and unconscious competence indicate familiarity that typically comes only from professional application of these skills. The praise was more qualified than what Rebecca had received, but something in Dr. Hoffman's tone suggested deeper significance. The assembled visitors looked between the two contestants uncertainly, sensing undercurrents in the evaluation that they didn't fully understand. Both contestants completed the assessment successfully. Dr. Hoffman concluded, "But I believe our observers might benefit from seeing one additional demonstration of advanced techniques." She turned to Sarah with the expression of professional curiosity. "Miss Chen, would you be willing to attempt our advanced proficiency protocol? It's considerably more challenging than what you've just completed." The request was unprecedented. The advanced proficiency protocol was typically reserved for instructor certification and professional evaluation. It involved complex technical challenges that tested not just basic competence, but deep understanding of weapon systems and their operational capabilities. "What does the advanced protocol involve?" Sarah asked calmly. "Blindfolded disassembly and reassembly," Dr. Hoffman replied. 6 weapons, 90 seconds total time limit. It's designed to test unconscious competence and muscle memory under extreme pressure. The challenge drew gasps from several visitors. Even Rebecca's confidence wavered as she considered the difficulty of what was being proposed. Blindfolded weapons maintenance required a level of familiarity that few people possessed, and the time constraint made it nearly impossible for anyone without extensive experience. "That's incredibly dangerous," Marcus Webb protested. "What if something goes wrong? Those weapons are worth more than most people's annual salaries." Dr. Hoffman nodded acknowledgement of the concern. "All appropriate safety measures will be in place. However, the risk level does require that only qualified individuals attempt this protocol." She looked directly at Sarah. "Miss Chen, do you feel comfortable attempting this assessment?" The question hung in the air like a challenge issued and accepted. Every person in the observation area understood that they were about to witness something extraordinary, whether it was a spectacular demonstration of unexpected skill or an embarrassing failure that would finally reveal the truth about Sarah's actual capabilities. Sarah considered the question for a moment, her gaze moving across the weapons that would be used in the assessment. 6 different systems, each with its own mechanical complexities and potential complications. 90 seconds to complete what most people couldn't accomplish in 20 minutes with full vision and careful attention. "Yes," she said simply. "I'm comfortable with that." Dr. Hoffman nodded approvingly. "Excellent. We'll need a few minutes to prepare the equipment and ensure all safety protocols are in place." As the technical staff began preparing for the advanced assessment, the visitors clustered together in intense discussion. The afternoon had already defied their expectations multiple times, and the prospect of witnessing an attempt at the blindfolded protocol had elevated the tension to an almost unbearable level. Rebecca stood apart from the group, her earlier confidence replaced by growing concern about what she might be about to witness. Her competitive instincts told her that Sarah's calm acceptance of such an extreme challenge suggested capabilities that far exceeded anything Rebecca had imagined possible. The weapons were arranged in precise order on a specially prepared workstation. Each firearm was positioned exactly 12 inches from its neighbors, with consistent spacing that would allow for systematic navigation without visual reference. Professional timing equipment was calibrated to measure performance to the 100th of a second. Dr. Hoffman addressed the assembled group one final time before beginning the advanced assessment. "What you are about to witness is an evaluation of capabilities that very few individuals possess. Regardless of the outcome, I want everyone to understand that attempting this protocol requires extraordinary confidence in one's abilities. She turned to Sarah, who stood quietly beside the workstation. "Miss Chen, are you ready to proceed?" Sarah nodded calmly. A technician approached with a specialized blindfold designed to eliminate all visual input while maintaining comfort and safety. The material was soft but completely opaque, ensuring that no light could penetrate around the edges. As the blindfold was secured in place, the last thing Sarah saw was the row of weapons waiting for her attention. 6 different challenges, each requiring its own approach and technique. 90 seconds to prove capabilities that most people would never believe possible. The observation area fell completely silent as Dr. Hoffman prepared to begin the ultimate test of Sarah's mysterious expertise. In the artificial twilight created by the blindfold, Sarah stood ready to reveal exactly who she really was and what she was truly capable of accomplishing. The timer was set. The challenge was clear. And everyone present understood that they were about to witness something that would fundamentally change their understanding of the quiet woman who had seemed so unremarkable when she first walked through Blackstone Academy's doors. Dr. Hoffman's finger hovered over the timing control, ready to begin an assessment that would either validate Sarah's extraordinary claims or expose them as elaborate pretense. The weapons lay waiting, their mechanical complexities hidden in darkness, ready to surrender their secrets to someone with the skill and confidence to claim them. "Begin," Dr. Hoffman announced, and Sarah's hands moved toward the first weapon. With the certainty of someone who had found their way home, Sarah's hands found the first weapon without hesitation, her fingers mapping its surface with the precision of a surgeon. The Glock pistol yielded to her touch as if it were an extension of her own body, components separating with mechanical whispers that seemed unnaturally loud in the absolute silence of the observation area. 15 seconds into the challenge, the pistol lay completely disassembled. Sarah's movements had been economical to the point of appearing choreographed, each motion flowing seamlessly into the next without pause or correction. Her breathing remained steady, showing no signs of stress despite the impossible time constraint and the weight of scrutiny from dozens of observers. Rebecca watched in growing disbelief as Sarah moved to the second weapon. The assault rifle required significantly more complex manipulation, with gas systems and bolt assemblies that could confuse even experienced technicians. Yet Sarah's hands navigated the weapon's intricacies as if guided by some internal map that rendered vision irrelevant. "This isn't possible," Marcus Webb whispered to Jennifer Walsh, his voice barely audible even in the profound quiet. "Nobody can work that fast without seeing what they're doing." Dr. Hoffman's eyes never left Sarah's hands as they worked with inhuman precision. 30 seconds had elapsed, and 2 weapons lay in perfect component arrays. The spacing between parts was geometrically precise, each piece positioned exactly where it would need to be for optimal reassembly efficiency. The third weapon was the tactical shotgun, its pump-action mechanism requiring specific timing and pressure to disassemble properly. Sarah's approach was different here, her hands pausing for perhaps half a second before engaging the action. The hesitation was so brief that most observers missed it entirely, but Dr. Hoffman recognized it as the moment when muscle memory engaged with conscious technique. 45 seconds. 3 weapons dismantled with surgical precision. "Colonel." Harrison found himself leaning forward despite his attempts to maintain professional composure. In 30 years of military service, he had never witnessed weapons handling of this caliber. Sarah's technique transcended training or education. It represented a level of unconscious competence that could only result from thousands of hours of practical application under extreme conditions. The fourth weapon was the submachine gun that had challenged Rebecca earlier. Sarah's hands found the problematic component immediately, applying the exact pressure and angle needed to release it without struggle. The disassembly proceeded without hesitation. each part falling into its designated position with mechanical inevitability. 60 seconds. 4 weapons reduced to their essential components. Rebecca's hands trembled slightly as she watched Sarah approach the precision rifle. The expensive optics and delicate mechanisms required extraordinary care under normal circumstances. Attempting disassembly while blindfolded and under time pressure bordered on reckless endangerment of equipment, worth more than most people's annual salaries. Sarah's handling of the precision rifle was poetry in motion. Her touch was feather-light when delicacy was required, firm when force was necessary. The sophisticated scope assembly separated from the rifle body as if eager to cooperate, while internal mechanisms yielded their secrets to fingers that knew exactly where to apply pressure. 75 seconds. 5 weapons dismantled. The final weapon was the most complex of all, a modern assault rifle with integrated electronics and modular components. Even with full vision and unlimited time, proper disassembly required intimate knowledge of multiple subsystems and their interdependencies. The electronic components alone could be permanently damaged by improper handling. Sarah's hands moved across the final weapon with the confidence of absolute familiarity. Electronic modules separated cleanly, mechanical assemblies yielded without resistance, and complex subsystems revealed their internal architecture to her experienced touch. Every movement was purposeful, every action calculated to achieve maximum efficiency without compromising component integrity. 87 seconds. 6 weapons completely disassembled. Dr. Hoffman's timer continued running as Sarah began the reassembly process. The time limit for the complete exercise was 90 seconds, leaving her mere moments to reconstruct the mechanical puzzle she had just solved. Most observers assumed the challenge was over, that even Sarah's remarkable disassembly speed couldn't overcome the mathematical impossibility of reassembling 6 complex weapons in 3 seconds. Sarah's hands moved like lightning across the component arrays, her fingers selecting parts with unerring accuracy despite the complete absence of visual reference. The first weapon began taking shape with startling speed, components flowing together as if magnetized to their proper positions. The observers watched in stunned silence as weapon after weapon materialized under Sarah's hands. There was no fumbling, no hesitation, no moment where her fingers searched for components or struggled with mechanical alignments. Each part found its place with the inevitability of natural law. 89 seconds. 5 weapons fully reassembled. The final weapon required the most delicate touch, its electronic components demanding precise alignment and careful connection. Sarah's hands moved with surgical precision, electronic modules sliding into position with barely audible clicks, mechanical assemblies engaging with satisfying metallic whispers. 90 seconds exactly. 6 weapons completely disassembled and reassembled. Sarah stepped back from the workstation and reached up to remove her blindfold. As her vision returned, she surveyed the completed weapons with the same calm expression she had maintained throughout the impossible demonstration. Each firearm was perfectly assembled, with components properly aligned and all safety mechanisms engaged. The observation area remained silent for several heartbeats as the magnitude of what they had witnessed began to register. Dr. Hoffman checked her timing equipment twice, unable to quite believe the precision of Sarah's performance. 90 seconds exactly, with 6 weapons disassembled and reassembled to factory specifications. Extraordinary, Dr. Hoffman said finally, her voice carrying a mixture of professional admiration and personal astonishment. In 25 years of tactical instruction, I have never witnessed weapons handling of this caliber. Rebecca stood frozen beside her own workstation, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. The demonstration she had just witnessed transcended anything she had learned through expensive training and family connections. Sarah's performance represented capabilities that existed in an entirely different category from conventional expertise. How? Rebecca asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How is that even possible?" Sarah turned to face the assembled group, her expression remaining calm and unrevealing. "Practice," she said simply, offering no additional explanation or context. Colonel Harrison stepped forward, his military bearing unable to conceal his amazement. "Miss Chen, that level of proficiency suggests professional experience far beyond civilian training. What exactly is your background?" Before Sarah could respond, the facility's main entrance alarm sounded. The distinctive tone indicated an unscheduled arrival of significant importance, causing Dr. Hoffman to check her communication device with obvious concern. "We have an unannounced inspection team arriving," she announced to the group. "Senior staff from Special Operations Command, requesting immediate facility access." The timing was remarkable, coming precisely at the moment when Sarah's extraordinary capabilities had been revealed. Colonel Harrison exchanged meaningful glances with Dr. Hoffman, both recognizing that unscheduled inspections typically occurred only when specific intelligence or concerns required immediate investigation. "All visitors will need to remain in designated areas during the inspection," Dr. Hoffman continued. "Standard security protocols apply until the review is completed." Through the facility's reinforced windows, the observers could see a convoy of black vehicles approaching the main entrance. The lead vehicle bore official government plates, while the others showed no external identification beyond their obviously official nature. Professional security personnel exited each vehicle before the primary passengers emerged. A man in an expensive suit stepped from the lead vehicle, his bearing immediately identifying him as someone accustomed to authority and immediate compliance. He was followed by several individuals in various uniforms, their collective presence suggesting a review team assembled for purposes beyond routine inspection. "Director Walsh," Colonel Harrison said under his breath, recognizing the lead figure. "What brings Special Operations Command to Blackstone on such short notice?" Director Jonathan Walsh was a legend in tactical training circles, known for identifying and developing exceptional talent within military and civilian contexts. His unexpected appearance at Blackstone Academy suggested interests that went far beyond routine facility evaluation. The inspection team entered the main building with purposeful efficiency, their movements coordinated and professional. Dr. Hoffman excused herself to meet with the arriving officials, leaving the visitors in the observation area under the supervision of Academy staff. "Something's not right about this," Marcus Webb muttered to Jennifer Walsh, unconsciously lowering his voice despite the distance from the arriving officials. "Random inspections don't happen at places like Blackstone. Not with that level of authority." Jennifer nodded agreement, her attention divided between the official convoy and Sarah's continued calm demeanor. While everyone else showed signs of concern or curiosity about the unexpected development, Sarah appeared completely unaffected by the arrival of high-ranking officials. Rebecca approached Sarah with obvious agitation. "This can't be a coincidence," she said, her voice carrying accusation and confusion. "You perform some impossible demonstration, and suddenly Special Operations Command shows up unannounced?" Sarah met Rebecca's gaze steadily. "Sometimes timing is coincidental," she replied calmly. The response was diplomatically neutral, but something in Sarah's tone suggested deeper knowledge than she was revealing. Rebecca's suspicions were clearly growing, fed by the accumulating evidence that Sarah was far more than she appeared to be. Dr. Hoffman returned to the group after several minutes of private consultation with the inspection team. Her expression was carefully controlled, but observant individuals could detect subtle signs of surprise and perhaps concern. "Miss Chen," Dr. Hoffman said formally, "Director Walsh has requested a private consultation regarding your demonstration today. Would you be available for a brief meeting?" The request was phrased politely, but everyone present understood its significance. Director Walsh didn't conduct routine consultations with civilian visitors, and his interest in Sarah confirmed that her performance had attracted attention from the highest levels of the tactical training community. "Of course," Sarah replied, showing no surprise at the unusual request. As Sarah followed Dr. Hoffman toward the administrative offices, the remaining visitors clustered together in intense discussion. The afternoon had progressed far beyond anyone's expectations, and the arrival of senior officials had elevated the situation to a level that suggested implications far beyond a simple training demonstration. "I knew something was off about her from the beginning," Marcus Webb declared, his voice carrying the defensiveness of someone whose initial judgments had been proven spectacularly wrong. "Nobody just walks into a place like this and performs at that level without serious background." But what kind of background? Jennifer Walsh wondered aloud. Even military training doesn't typically produce that level of unconscious competence. She was working faster than most people can think. Rebecca remained silent, her competitive instincts warring with growing recognition that she had encountered someone operating in an entirely different category of capability. Her expensive training and family connections had prepared her for many challenges, but not for confronting genuine expertise that rendered her own accomplishments insignificant by comparison. In Director Walsh's temporary office, Sarah sat across from one of the most powerful figures in American tactical training. Walsh studied her with the intensity of someone accustomed to evaluating human potential under pressure, his experienced gaze taking in details that others might have missed. "Miss Chen," Walsh began, his voice carrying the authority of absolute confidence, "your performance today was remarkable. 90 seconds for complete disassembly and reassembly of 6 weapons, while blindfolded exceeds the capabilities of most professional operators." Sarah listened without comment, her expression revealing nothing about her thoughts or reactions to the praise. "Such proficiency typically requires extensive experience under field conditions," Walsh continued. "The kind of experience that comes from operational deployment rather than civilian training." He paused, allowing the implication to settle before continuing. "Our records indicate very limited information about your background, Miss Chen. Given the capabilities you've demonstrated, I find that somewhat surprising." Sarah considered her response carefully. "I prefer to let my actions speak for themselves," she said finally. Walsh smiled slightly, recognizing the evasion for what it was. "Your actions today have spoken quite eloquently. They've also raised questions that require answers." He leaned forward slightly, his tone becoming more direct. "Miss Chen, are you currently or have you ever been associated with any military or intelligence organization?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that could reshape everything the assembled observers thought they knew about the quiet woman who had seemed so unremarkable that morning. Sarah met Walsh's gaze steadily, her expression calm but revealing. For the first time since arriving at Blackstone Academy, she allowed a hint of something deeper to show in her eyes. Not fear or concern, but perhaps recognition that the moment for complete revelation had finally arrived. "Director Walsh," she said quietly, "I think you already know the answer to that question." Walsh nodded slowly, his suspicions confirmed by Sarah's response. "Indeed I do, Miss Chen. The question is whether you're ready to acknowledge who you really are." He reached into his briefcase and withdrew a classified folder bearing official seals and security markings. The documents inside represented information that few people were authorized to access, details about operations and individuals whose existence was known only to the highest levels of government. "Captain Sarah Chen," Walsh said formally, reading from the file. "Former Special Activities Division, Central Intelligence Agency. Classified operational history spanning 8 years, including deployments to Afghanistan, Syria, and classified locations in Eastern Europe." The revelation hung in the air like smoke from a discharged weapon. transforming everything the assembled visitors thought they knew about the woman they had dismissed and mocked. Sarah's true identity explained not just her extraordinary weapons proficiency, but her calm confidence and unconscious competence under pressure. Your official record indicates retirement following a classified incident that resulted in significant operational casualties, Walsh continued. Since then, you've maintained complete operational silence and avoided any association with tactical training or military facilities. Sarah's expression remained controlled, but something flickered in her eyes at the mention of operational casualties. The hint of old pain suggested that her retirement had been motivated by more than simple career change. Until today, Walsh observed, when you chose to demonstrate capabilities that inevitably would attract official attention. He closed the file and set it aside, his attention focusing entirely on Sarah's response to his revelations. The question, Captain Chen, is what prompted you to break your operational silence after 4 years of complete withdrawal from this community. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, considering her response to a question that touched on motivations she had kept buried since her retirement. The events of the day had forced her to confront aspects of her identity that she had tried to leave behind. Sometimes, she said finally, circumstances require you to be who you really are. Walsh nodded understanding. And today's circumstances required you to demonstrate capabilities that most people spend their entire careers trying to develop. He stood and moved to the window, overlooking the training facility where the visitors still waited in confused discussion. Your performance today will have consequences, Captain. Word of demonstrations like yours travels quickly in our community. Sarah joined him at the window, her gaze moving across the expensive equipment and privileged students that characterized Blackstone Academy. I understand, she said simply. Do you? Walsh asked. Because I suspect today's events are just the beginning of a much larger conversation about your future role in this community. He turned to face her directly. Captain Chen, your country still has need of your unique capabilities. The question is whether you're ready to consider ending your self-imposed exile. The offer hung between them, loaded with implications that would determine not just Sarah's future, but potentially the resolution of current operations that required exactly her combination of skills and experience. Outside the window, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the training facility where privileged students and expensive equipment represented one vision of tactical excellence. But inside the temporary office, two people who understood the real cost of operational capability were discussing possibilities that transcended civilian training and academic achievement. Sarah's response would determine whether the quiet woman, who had been mocked and dismissed that morning, would return to the shadow she had inhabited for 4 years, or step back into a world where her extraordinary capabilities could serve purposes larger than personal anonymity. The moment of decision had arrived, and everyone involved understood that the consequences would extend far beyond the walls of Blackstone Academy. Sarah stood in the administrative office, her gaze fixed on Director Walsh as the weight of his offer settled between them. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the training facility where her carefully maintained anonymity had been shattered in 90 seconds of precise mechanical execution. 4 years of deliberate obscurity had ended the moment she chose to demonstrate who she really was. I need time to consider, Sarah said finally, her voice carrying the measured tone of someone accustomed to decisions with life-altering consequences. Walsh nodded, understanding the magnitude of what he was asking. Take all the time you need, Captain. But understand that your demonstration today has already changed everything. You can't return to the shadows as easily as you entered them. He gestured toward the observation area where Rebecca and the other visitors waited in confused speculation. Those people witnessed something extraordinary. Word will spread, questions will be asked, and your operational silence is effectively over whether you choose to acknowledge it or not. Sarah accepted the truth of his assessment without argument. The moment she had stepped forward to correct Rebecca's technical error, she had begun a sequence of events that would inevitably lead to this conversation. Her choice to demonstrate advanced capabilities had been conscious, even if she hadn't fully anticipated the immediate consequences. "The incident in Syria," Sarah said quietly, referencing the classified operation that had ended her career. "The after-action review concluded that tactical decisions I made resulted in civilian casualties. How do I know that won't happen again?" Walsh's expression softened slightly, recognizing the genuine anguish behind her question. "Captain, operational decisions under extreme pressure always carry risk. The review also concluded that your choices prevented significantly greater loss of life. Sometimes the best available option still involves tragic consequences." He moved to his briefcase and withdrew another file, this one containing photographs and mission summaries from Sarah's operational history. "Your record shows consistent excellence under impossible conditions. One incident, however tragic, doesn't negate 8 years of successful operations that saved countless lives." Sarah studied the photographs Walsh displayed, images from missions she had tried to forget during 4 years of civilian anonymity. Each picture represented decisions made under extreme pressure, lives saved or lost based on split-second judgments in hostile environments. "The world hasn't become safer since your retirement," Walsh continued. "If anything, the threats we face have become more complex and require exactly the kind of expertise you possess. Your country needs operatives who can think clearly under pressure and execute impossible tasks with precision." He paused, allowing the implications to register before delivering his final argument. "Captain Chen, today you demonstrated that your capabilities haven't diminished despite 4 years away from operational duty. The question is whether you'll use those capabilities to serve something larger than personal guilt and self-imposed exile." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of decisions she had avoided for 4 years pressing down on her. The comfortable anonymity of civilian life had been purchased at the cost of denying who she really was and what she was capable of accomplishing. "If I accept," she said slowly, "I want operational autonomy. No micromanagement, no second-guessing. Tactical decisions in the field. I choose my team, I plan my missions, I execute according to my judgment." Walsh smiled, recognizing the negotiation tactics of someone who understood the value of her own capabilities. "Done. You'll have complete operational authority with direct reporting to my office only." The agreement was reached with the efficiency of 2 professionals who understood exactly what they were discussing. Sarah's return to operational duty would be on terms that acknowledged her unique capabilities and the lessons learned from her previous experiences. Meanwhile, in the observation area, Rebecca paced nervously while Marcus and Jennifer engaged in intense speculation about the private meeting taking place in the administrative offices. The arrival of Director Walsh and his team had elevated the afternoon's events far beyond casual training demonstrations. "She's CIA," Rebecca declared, with the certainty of someone who had finally connected disparate pieces of evidence. "Had to be. That level of weapons proficiency doesn't come from civilian training, and Walsh doesn't waste time on routine consultations." Marcus nodded agreement, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by nervous recognition of how badly he had misjudged the situation. "We mocked a federal agent. An active federal agent who could probably have us arrested for interfering with government operations." "Former agent," Jennifer corrected, though her voice carried little confidence. "If she were still active, she wouldn't have been here as a civilian visitor, would she?" The question hung unanswered as the 3 visitors contemplated the implications of their earlier behavior. Each of them had participated in mocking and dismissing someone whose actual capabilities far exceeded anything they had imagined possible. Dr. Hoffman returned to the observation area, her expression carefully neutral, but suggesting awareness of sensitive information she couldn't share. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid today's demonstrations have concluded. However, I want to express my appreciation for your participation in what turned out to be a rather extraordinary educational experience. Her diplomatic phrasing couldn't disguise the magnitude of what had transpired. The visitors exchanged uncertain glances, recognizing that they had witnessed something significant, but lacking the security clearance to understand its full implications. "Will we be able to speak with Miss Chen before leaving?" Rebecca asked, her earlier confidence replaced by genuine curiosity and perhaps concern about the consequences of her behavior. "Miss Chen is currently engaged in consultations that may extend well into the evening," Dr. Hoffman replied diplomatically. "However, I suspect your paths may cross again under different circumstances." The cryptic response only deepened the visitors' confusion and concern. Rebecca's competitive instincts warred with growing recognition that she had encountered someone operating in an entirely different category of capability and authority. As the visitors prepared to leave Blackstone Academy, Sarah emerged from the administrative offices accompanied by Director Walsh. Her appearance was unchanged from the morning, still wearing the same simple clothing that had prompted so much dismissive commentary. However, something fundamental had shifted in her bearing, a subtle change that suggested internal decisions had been made. "Miss Thornton," Sarah said, approaching Rebecca with the same calm demeanor she had maintained throughout the day. "I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to participate in today's demonstrations." Rebecca stared at Sarah, searching for signs of sarcasm or hidden meaning in the polite words. We had no idea who you really were. If we had known, you would have treated me differently based on credentials rather than character." Sarah finished quietly. "That's exactly why I prefer anonymity. It reveals who people really are when they think status and authority aren't watching." The gentle rebuke carried more impact than any harsh criticism could have achieved. Rebecca found herself confronted with uncomfortable truths about her own behavior and the assumptions that had guided her interactions with someone she had deemed unworthy of respect. "I owe you an apology," Rebecca said finally, her voice carrying genuine remorse. "We all do. Our behavior was inexcusable regardless of who you turned out to be." Sarah nodded acknowledgement of the apology without accepting or rejecting it explicitly. Everyone makes judgments based on limited information. The question is whether you learn from the experience. Marcus and Jennifer approached hesitantly. Their earlier confidence completely evaporated in the face of Sarah's revealed identity and capabilities. The expensive equipment and family connections that had defined their status at Blackstone Academy seemed insignificant compared to the genuine expertise they had witnessed. "Ma'am," Marcus said formally, unconsciously adopting a tone of respect he had never shown Sarah previously. "We wanted to express our regret for any disrespect we may have shown during today's activities." Sarah studied the young man whose expensive tactical gear and family name had seemed so important that morning. "Mr. Webb, respect isn't something you show people based on their credentials. It's something you offer because recognizing human dignity costs nothing and reveals everything about your character." The observation carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom, delivered without condescension but with unmistakable authority. Marcus found himself genuinely considering the implications of Sarah's words rather than simply waiting for the conversation to end. Director Walsh approached the group, his presence immediately commanding attention from everyone present. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've had the privilege of witnessing something extraordinary today. Captain Chen's demonstration represents capabilities that very few individuals possess." The formal acknowledgement of Sarah's military rank caused the visitors to reassess everything they thought they understood about the day's events. Rebecca's competitive instincts finally yielded to recognition that she had encountered someone whose achievements existed in an entirely different category from civilian accomplishment. "Captain Chen has agreed to resume active duty in service to her country," Walsh continued, his announcement carrying implications that extended far beyond the immediate audience. I trust that today's events will remain confidential until such time as official statements are released. The visitors nodded understanding, recognizing that they had become witnesses to classified information that could have serious consequences if mishandled. Their earlier concerns about social media posts and casual gossip evaporated in the face of genuine security considerations. As the official vehicles prepared to depart Blackstone Academy, Sarah approached Dr. Hoffman with genuine appreciation for the unexpected opportunity the day had provided. "Doctor, thank you for allowing me to participate in today's assessments. The advanced protocol was exactly what I needed to make my decision." Dr. Hoffman smiled, understanding the deeper meaning behind Sarah's words. "Captain, it was my honor to witness your demonstration. I suspect Blackstone Academy will benefit from future consultations as you resume your career." The suggestion of ongoing collaboration was subtle but significant, indicating that Sarah's return to operational duty would likely involve training and development, responsibilities that could reshape tactical education at the highest levels. Rebecca watched the official convoy depart, her mind still processing the extraordinary reversal of everything she had assumed about Sarah and about her own place in the tactical training community. The expensive equipment and family connections that had defined her identity seemed inadequate compared to the genuine expertise she had witnessed. "I have a lot to learn," Rebecca said quietly to Dr. Hoffman as they watched the vehicles disappear down the Academy's private road. "We all do," Dr. Hoffman replied thoughtfully. "Today reminded us that genuine capability often appears in unexpected forms and that our assumptions about who belongs in elite environments may be fundamentally flawed." The observation carried implications that extended far beyond the specific events of the afternoon. Blackstone Academy's exclusive culture and emphasis on credentials over character had been challenged by someone whose quiet competence had revealed the limitations of their conventional wisdom. As evening approached, and the facility returned to its normal routine, the impact of Sarah's demonstration continued to resonate. Word of the extraordinary performance would spread through tactical training communities, generating speculation and questions that could influence recruitment and evaluation standards across multiple organizations. Sarah Chen had arrived at Blackstone Academy as an anonymous visitor wearing simple clothes and carrying no credentials. She departed as a returning operative whose capabilities had impressed the highest levels of the tactical training establishment and whose quiet dignity had exposed uncomfortable truths about privilege, assumption, and the real meaning of respect. The transformation was complete, but its consequences would extend far beyond the walls of the academy where it had taken place. Sometimes the most profound changes begin with someone refusing to accept that they don't belong, and sometimes the strongest demonstration of power is knowing exactly when to reveal who you really are. 6 months after that transformative afternoon at Blackstone Academy, the tactical training world had undergone subtle but significant changes. Word of Sarah Chen's extraordinary demonstration had spread through professional networks with the careful discretion typical of classified communities, generating conversations about talent recognition, operational readiness, and the dangerous assumptions that could cause organizations to overlook their most valuable assets. Dr. Patricia Hoffman stood in her renovated office at Blackstone Academy, reviewing curriculum changes that had been implemented following extensive consultation with newly promoted Colonel Sarah Chen. The Academy's evaluation protocols now emphasized practical competence over credentials, with assessment criteria designed to identify genuine capability regardless of its source or presentation. The Chen Protocol, as staff members had begun calling the new evaluation system, had already identified 3 previously overlooked candidates whose unconventional backgrounds had masked exceptional potential. A former automotive mechanic demonstrated intuitive understanding of mechanical systems that translated perfectly to weapons maintenance. A competitive archer possessed hand-eye coordination and mental discipline that exceeded most formally trained marksmen. A retired nurse displayed tactical thinking and stress management capabilities that surprised even experienced instructors. Rebecca Thornton entered Dr. Hoffman's office carrying a detailed report on her recent performance in the Academy's Advanced Instructor Certification Program. Her expensive tactical gear had been replaced by standard issue equipment, and her approach to training had evolved from competitive demonstration to collaborative education. "Doctor, I wanted to discuss my final evaluation results," Rebecca said, her tone carrying none of the entitled confidence that had characterized her earlier interactions. "I understand there are still areas where my performance doesn't meet the new standards." Dr. Hoffman reviewed Rebecca's file thoughtfully. "Miss Thornton, your technical proficiency remains excellent, but leadership evaluation requires more than individual competence. How do you assess your ability to recognize and develop potential in others?" The question struck at the heart of Rebecca's ongoing transformation. Her encounter with Sarah had forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about her own assumptions and the blind spots created by privilege and preconceived notions about what capability looked like. "I'm learning to look beyond surface presentations," Rebecca admitted honestly. "But I struggle with trusting assessments that contradict my initial impressions. It's harder than I expected to overcome instinctive judgments about who belongs in elite environments." Dr. Hoffman nodded approvingly at Rebecca's self-awareness. "Recognition of bias is the first step toward overcoming it. Your willingness to acknowledge these challenges suggests genuine growth potential." She opened a classified folder containing information about an upcoming training assignment. "Colonel Chen has requested specific instructors for a new program designed to identify unconventional talent within civilian populations. Your participation would provide valuable experience in capability recognition under challenging conditions." The opportunity represented both professional advancement and personal redemption for Rebecca. Working directly with Sarah would require confronting the full implications of her earlier behavior while learning from someone whose expertise had fundamentally challenged her understanding of tactical excellence. "I would be honored to participate," Rebecca replied, understanding the significance of the offer. "When does the program begin?" Before Dr. Hoffman could respond, her communication device signaled an incoming priority message. She read the contents quickly, her expression shifting to surprise and concern. "It appears Colonel Chen's first operational assignment has encountered unexpected complications," Dr. Hoffman said carefully. "She's requesting immediate consultation with Academy personnel regarding specialized training requirements." The message was deliberately vague, but both women understood its implications. Sarah's return to active duty had involved her in operations that required the kind of expertise she had demonstrated during her blindfolded assessment. The fact that she was reaching out to Blackstone Academy suggested challenges that exceeded CONVENTIONL training capabilities. Rebecca felt a mixture of concern and curiosity about Sarah's current situation. Despite their difficult initial encounter, she had developed genuine respect for Sarah's capabilities and wanted to contribute meaningfully to whatever challenges she was facing. "If Colonel Chen needs assistance, I'm available immediately," Rebecca said without hesitation. "Whatever my previous mistakes, I want to help if possible." Dr. Hoffman considered the offer thoughtfully. Rebecca's transformation had been genuine, but operational environments would test that growth under extreme pressure. However, Sarah's specific request for Academy personnel suggested she had particular individuals in mind for the consultation. "Very well," Dr. Hoffman decided. "Prepare for immediate deployment to a classified location. You'll be briefed during transport, and operational security protocols will be strictly enforced." Within 2 hours, Rebecca found herself aboard a military aircraft heading toward coordinates she wasn't authorized to know. The briefing materials provided during flight revealed that Sarah's current operation involved training local security forces in a hostile environment where conventional American military presence wasn't politically feasible. The mission required instructors who could rapidly assess and develop capabilities among individuals with no formal military experience, but extensive practical knowledge of local conditions. Sarah had specifically requested personnel who understood the importance of looking beyond conventional credentials to identify genuine potential. The aircraft touched down at a remote airfield where Sarah waited with a small team of operators, whose relaxed professionalism immediately identified them as elite personnel. Sarah's appearance had changed subtly since their last meeting. She wore field gear that showed signs of actual use, and her bearing carried the quiet authority of someone actively engaged in operational duties. "Rebecca," Sarah said simply, extending her hand in greeting. "Thank you for coming on short notice." The use of her first name signaled a level of professional acceptance that Rebecca found both gratifying and intimidating. Sarah's willingness to request her participation suggested genuine confidence in Rebecca's potential despite their problematic history. "Colonel, I'm honored to contribute to your mission," Rebecca replied formally. "What do you need from me?" Sarah led Rebecca toward a cluster of temporary buildings that served as the operational base. "We're training a group of local volunteers who need advanced weapons proficiency in extremely limited time. Traditional instruction methods aren't effective because these individuals learn differently than conventional military recruits." She paused outside a building where voices could be heard speaking in multiple languages. "They have extensive practical experience with improvised weapons and defensive tactics, but they need formal training in modern systems. The challenge is adapting our instruction to their existing knowledge base." Rebecca understood the complexity of the challenge immediately. Training experienced fighters required different approaches in instructing raw recruits, and cultural differences could create additional barriers to effective education. The ability to recognize and build upon existing capabilities would be crucial to mission success. "How do you want me to approach the assessment?" Rebecca asked. Sarah's response revealed the depth of her thinking about talent recognition and development. "Watch how they handle equipment, but pay more attention to how they solve problems and adapt to unexpected situations. Look for indicators of tactical thinking rather than formal technique." The guidance reflected lessons learned not just from operational experience, but from Sarah's own encounter with assumption and bias at Blackstone Academy. She was applying those insights to create training methodologies that could identify and develop capability regardless of its conventional presentation. Inside the training facility, Rebecca encountered a diverse group of individuals whose appearances defied easy categorization. Some showed obvious signs of combat experience, while others seemed more like civilian volunteers than professional fighters. Their equipment was mismatched and worn, but their attention during instruction was absolutely focused. Sarah began the session with a practical demonstration rather than theoretical instruction. She presented a complex tactical scenario and asked for immediate responses, observing how each individual processed information and developed solutions under pressure. Rebecca watched in fascination as unconventional expertise revealed itself through practical application. A middle-aged woman who looked like a shopkeeper demonstrated sophisticated understanding of urban combat tactics. A teenager with no formal training showed intuitive grasp of ballistic principles that exceeded many academy graduates. "What do you see?" Sarah asked Rebecca quietly as they observed the exercises. Rebecca considered her response carefully, applying lessons learned from her own transformation. "I see people who think tactically but lack formal vocabulary to express their knowledge. They're solving the right problems but using methods we don't typically teach." Sarah nodded approvingly. "Exactly. Our job is to give them tools and terminology. for capabilities they already possess rather than imposing foreign methodologies that contradict their experience. The insight represented a fundamental shift in training philosophy that could revolutionize how tactical education was approached. Instead of assuming ignorance and building from zero, effective instruction required recognizing existing expertise and enhancing it through targeted development. Over the following days, Rebecca worked alongside Sarah to develop assessment and training protocols that honored the trainees' existing knowledge while providing advanced capabilities they needed for their mission. The experience challenged every assumption Rebecca had held about tactical education and professional development. "You're learning," Sarah observed during a break between training sessions. "I can see you processing information differently than when we first met." Rebecca appreciated the acknowledgement while recognizing how much growth remained ahead of her. "That day at Blackstone changed everything I thought I knew about capability and recognition. I'm still learning to see past my initial assumptions." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "We all carry biases that can blind us to potential. The key is maintaining awareness of those limitations and actively working to overcome them." The conversation was interrupted by urgent communications indicating that the trainees would be deploying sooner than expected. Political developments had accelerated the operational timeline, requiring immediate completion of their preparation despite the compressed training schedule. Sarah shifted immediately into operational mode, her demeanor becoming focused and decisive. "We have 48 hours to finalize their preparation. Rebecca, I need you to conduct final assessments and identify any individuals who aren't ready for deployment." The responsibility was enormous, requiring Rebecca to make judgments that could affect both mission success and individual safety. However, her weeks of training under Sarah's guidance had prepared her to recognize genuine readiness despite unconventional presentations. Working through the night, Rebecca evaluated each trainee's capabilities using assessment criteria that emphasized practical competence over formal compliance. Several individuals who had struggled with standard procedures demonstrated exceptional proficiency when evaluated through mission-relevant scenarios. "Your assessments are accurate," Sarah confirmed after reviewing Rebecca's recommendations. "You've identified the right people for deployment while recognizing those who need additional preparation." The validation represented professional recognition that Rebecca had worked months to earn. More importantly, it confirmed that her transformation from privileged competitor to capable instructor had achieved genuine substance rather than superficial change. As the deployment approached, Sarah pulled Rebecca aside for a final conversation about lessons learned and future opportunities. "You've demonstrated real growth during this assignment," Sarah said. "Dr. Hoffman has recommended you for permanent assignment to the Unconventional Talent Identification Program. Are you interested?" The offer represented exactly the kind of meaningful work Rebecca had discovered she wanted to pursue. Training and developing overlooked potential appealed to her far more than competing for recognition in conventional elite environments. "Yes," Rebecca replied without hesitation. "I want to continue this work." Sarah smiled, recognizing genuine commitment when she heard it. "Good. The program will expand significantly over the next year, and will need instructors who understand that capability appears in many forms." As Rebecca prepared to return to Blackstone Academy, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with her dismissive treatment of a woman in simple clothes. That encounter had ultimately led to professional redemption and personal growth that exceeded anything she could have achieved through conventional advancement. Sarah's demonstration had revealed more than exceptional weapons proficiency. It had exposed the limitations of assumptions and the importance of recognizing human potential regardless of its presentation. The lessons learned that day continued to influence tactical training methodologies and talent recognition practices across multiple organizations. The quiet woman who had been mocked for her unremarkable appearance had transformed not just her own circumstances, but the perspectives and careers of everyone whose lives she had touched. Sometimes the most profound changes begin with someone refusing to accept that they don't belong. And sometimes the greatest strength lies in knowing exactly when to reveal who you really are. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.